Once upon a time, nestled in a quiet little village on the edge of a great sprawling forest, there lived a sweet and cheerful girl. She was adored by everyone who knew her, from the village baker to the friendly postman. Her grandmother, who lived just on the other side of the woods, loved her most of all. One year, for her birthday, her grandmother made her a beautiful hooded cloak, dyed the vibrant color of a summer poppy. It was a brilliant, fiery red. The little girl loved it so much that she wore it everywhere she went. She wore it to the market, she wore it while playing with her friends, and she even wore it while helping her mother in the garden. Soon, everyone in the village began calling her Little Red Riding Hood, and the name stuck. One bright and sunny morning, the kind of morning where the dew still glistens on the grass and the birds sing their happiest songs, Little Red Riding Hood's mother called her into the kitchen. The room smelled wonderfully of freshly baked goods. On the table sat a wicker basket, carefully lined with a clean linen cloth. Inside, her mother had placed a delicious cake, still warm from the oven, and a pat of rich, creamy butter. "Your grandmother is feeling a little under the weather today," her mother said, her voice filled with concern. "I want you to take this basket to her. It will surely lift her spirits." She tied a neat bow on the basket's handle and handed it to her daughter. "Now listen closely, my dear. The path through the forest is the quickest way, but you must promise me you'll stay on it. Don't wander off, not even for a moment. And most importantly, do not talk to any strangers you might meet along the way. Do you understand?" Little Red Riding Hood, her eyes wide and sincere, nodded eagerly. "I promise, Mother. I'll be very careful." She gave her mother a quick hug, picked up the basket, and with a cheerful wave, set off on her journey. The forest was a magical place. Sunlight streamed through the canopy of leaves, dappling the path in shifting patterns of light and shadow. Little Red Riding Hood skipped along, humming a little tune. She watched as squirrels chased each other up the trunks of ancient oak trees and listened to the cheerful chorus of birdsong that echoed through the woods. The air was fresh and smelled of damp earth and sweet wildflowers. She was so captivated by the beauty around her that she almost didn't notice the pair of yellow eyes watching her from behind a thick bush. Suddenly, a figure stepped out from behind a large tree, blocking her path. It was a large gray wolf. He had a long snout, pointed ears, and a thick bushy tail. But when he spoke, his voice was surprisingly smooth and friendly. "Good morning, my dear," he said, offering a wide, toothy smile. "And where might a lovely young lady like you be off to on such a fine day?" Little Red Riding Hood, who had never seen a wolf up close before, was a little startled. But he seemed so polite, and she completely forgot her mother's strict warning about talking to strangers. "Good morning, sir," she replied politely. "I'm on my way to my grandmother's house. She's not feeling very well, so I'm bringing her a basket with some cake and butter to help her feel better." The wolf's ears perked up. "Your grandmother's house, you say? How very thoughtful of you, and where does your dear grandmother live?" he asked, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "Oh, it's not far from here," Little Red Riding Hood explained innocently. "Her cottage is just on the other side of the forest, right past that big cluster of oak trees you can see from the main path." The wolf's smile grew wider. An idea, a very wicked idea, was forming in his cunning mind. "What a wonderful granddaughter you are," he purred. "But look around you. The forest is filled with such beautiful wildflowers. Don't you think your grandmother would love a lovely bouquet to brighten up her room?" Little Red Riding Hood's eyes lit up. "What a fantastic idea," she exclaimed. "She would love that." And with that, she skipped off the path and began to gather a colorful bunch of daisies, bluebells, and buttercups, completely forgetting her promise to her mother. The moment Little Red Riding Hood was distracted, the wolf turned and sprinted away. He didn't follow the winding path she was on. Oh no, he knew a secret shortcut, a hidden trail that led directly to the grandmother's cottage. His paws barely made a sound as he raced through the undergrowth, his mind fixed on his devious plan. He arrived at the little cottage in no time at all. It was a quaint little house with a thatched roof and a small garden out front. He crept up to the wooden door and knocked gently. Tap, tap, tap. From inside, a frail voice called out, "Who's there?" The wolf cleared his throat and disguised his deep, gravelly voice, making it high and sweet like a young girl's. "It's me, grandmother," he called out, "Little Red Riding Hood. I've brought you some cake and butter." The unsuspecting grandmother, who was tucked away in her bed, was delighted. "Oh, how wonderful, my dear. Just lift the latch and come in. The door is unlocked. The wolf grinned wickedly. He lifted the latch, pushed the door open, and slunk inside. The poor grandmother barely had time to gasp before the wolf pounced, swallowing her in a single gulp. He then quickly looked around the room. He saw the grandmother's nightgown folded on a chair and her frilly nightcap on the bedside table. Without a second thought, he slipped on the nightgown and pulled the cap down over his furry ears. He then climbed into the bed, pulled the covers all the way up to his chin, and drew the curtains around the bed to hide himself in the shadows. He settled in, licking his lips in anticipation, and waited for the main course to arrive. A little while later, Little Red Riding Hood, her arms full of beautiful flowers, finally arrived at the cottage. She noticed the door was ajar and felt a little uneasy. That's strange, she thought. Grandmother usually keeps it closed. She called out, "Grandmother, it's me." But there was no reply. She stepped cautiously inside. The cottage was quiet, and the main room seemed darker than usual because the bed curtains were drawn. She walked over to the bed and peeked through the curtains. There, lying in the bed, was what looked like her grandmother, but something was very, very different. "Oh, grandmother," Little Red Riding Hood said softly, leaning closer. "What big eyes you have!" From under the covers, the wolf replied in his disguised, high-pitched voice, "All the better to see you with, my dear." Little Red Riding Hood tilted her head, still feeling puzzled. "And grandmother," she continued, "what big ears you have." The wolf shuffled in the bed. "All the better to hear you with, my dear." The girl leaned in even closer now, her nose almost touching the wolf's snout. "But grandmother," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly, "what terribly big teeth you have." This time, the wolf didn't try to disguise his voice. He let out a low, menacing growl. "All the better to eat you with." He roared, and with that, he threw back the covers and leaped out of the bed, revealing his true, terrifying self. Little Red Riding Hood screamed, a piercing shriek of pure terror that echoed through the quiet forest. Just at that moment, a kind and strong woodcutter happened to be passing by the cottage on his way home from work. He had his heavy axe resting on his shoulder. When he heard the scream, he knew instantly that something was wrong. He ran to the cottage, threw open the door, and saw the fearsome wolf about to pounce on the poor girl. Without hesitating, the brave woodcutter swung his axe, scaring the wolf, so much that the creature yelped in fear, turned tail, and fled out the door and deep into the woods, never to be seen in that part of the forest again. The woodcutter rushed over to the bed, and to his surprise, he heard a faint cry coming from inside the wolf's big belly. He carefully made a snip, and out popped the grandmother, safe and sound. Little Red Riding Hood ran to her grandmother, and they hugged each other tightly, both of them crying with relief. They thanked the woodcutter over and over again for his bravery. They all sat down together and enjoyed the delicious cake and butter, sharing the story of their narrow escape. From that day forward, Little Red Riding Hood never, ever forgot her mother's advice. She always stayed right on the path, and she never, ever spoke to a stranger again. And she, her mother, and her grandmother all lived happily and safely ever after. Thank you for listening to this wonderful story. If you enjoyed it, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing tales. See you next time.